Good morning, everybody. Good to see all of you. I'm looking around the auditorium to see if I see Bernie Sanders anywhere. Now, if you're not on social media, you have no idea why I just said that. So I'm just going to leave it at that and let you ask someone that might know the inside scoop on that one. I really appreciate all of our men who have led us this morning as we have worshiped together. And it always makes our worship so meaningful with these wonderful thoughts that are expressed and these prayers that are prayed and the wonderful song selections that are so common and so much a part of our family here at Westside. And I'm grateful for that. I want you to know that life's not always going to be this way. Aren't you glad? I was sitting here thinking this morning, I don't know about you, but I just have to admit I'm tired. I'm tired of these masks. I'm just tired of COVID. I'm tired of just this routine. How about you? You're not alone. Your preacher is tired as well. But I also want you to know this, that even though we are in this period, those of us who are on staff here, John and Casey and myself, along with our elders, are already making plans for how we re-enter after this pandemic is over, how we can do things differently to effectively minister to our community more effectively and efficiently, how our worship can be improved, how our fellowship with one another can be improved. I don't want you to think that nothing is going on right now, because behind the scenes, there is a great deal that is going on in preparation for the time when these restrictions will be lifted and we can return to a somewhat normal lifestyle, even though it will be somewhat different because we've all changed over the last year. But more on that later on. Back in the early 1990s, television executives were planning a program that involved 6 young adults, all of them in their 20s, who lived in Manhattan. The name of the show was going to be Insomniac Cafe. As the show moved closer to production, the executives decided to change that name to the name 6 of 1. As the show began to air, they decided they didn't like that name either. I don't blame them. They chose instead a one-word name that goes down in television history: Friends. For the next 10 years, Friends aired on television and is commonly seen in syndication today. Friends. What a noble term. What is a friend? What does that word mean to you? Emerson said that a friend is someone who stands by you in all circumstances and who loves you no matter what happens. C.S. Lewis said that friendship is born when one person looks at another and says, "What? You too?" I like the comic strip Winnie the Pooh, where Winnie the bear is walking along and little Piglet comes up and grasps his hand and simply looks up at him and says, "Pooh, is that you?" And Pooh says, "Of course, Piglet." And Piglet nestles his head against Pooh and says, "I thought so." Friendship. And the writer and speaker Helen Keller, who was both deaf and blind, once made the remark that she would rather walk with a friend in the darkness than to walk alone in the light. Friendship. So very, very important. And in the story of Job, we find this man who had been through so much suffering in his life. We find here in Job chapter 2, 3 of his friends coming a great distance in order to share in his grief. Their names were Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar. We're going to read about a 4th one in just a moment. But initially, these 3 friends made an appointment to come to where Job was. And there, as they approached, they didn't even recognize Job. His face had been so disfigured by these putrid sores that covered his body from head to foot. They didn't even recognize him. And when they arrived and saw his terrible condition, they ripped their clothing, took dust, threw it in the air and on themselves, and then they sat silently, without a word, for 7 days. When Job finally spoke, the 26 verses of chapter 3 are like a dam bursting, and torrents of misery, grief, pain spilling forth in Job's words. Job lamented the day that he was conceived in his mother's womb. He cursed the day that he was born, that light had ever dawned upon that day. But he never cursed God. He never surrendered his integrity, which was what Satan was after. I think there's some lessons that you and I can learn from Job's relationship with his friends. Beginning in chapter 4 all the way through chapter 31 in this book, we find Job's conversation with these first 3 friends. Now, it's written in Hebrew poetic form, and it is divided into 3 cycles or sections. A friend would speak, Job would reply. A friend would speak, Job would reply. Another friend would speak, and Job would reply. This goes on 3 different times, 3 different cycles over these next 27 chapters of the book. Don't worry, we're not going to look at all 27 chapters in one sermon. And then at the end of chapter 31, coming into chapter 32, a 4th friend by the name of Elihu arrives on the scene. He is a younger man than the other 3. He has heard their discussion. He becomes angry and he feels compelled to add his take on the situation. And so for the next 6 chapters, Elihu expounds upon his understanding of Job's suffering and sorrow. I think there are 2 important lessons this morning for us, and I want to focus on these 2. And the first of these is that friends are extremely important in life. Whoever you are, whatever your life's situation, whether you're a student or a retiree or somewhere in between, friends are extremely important in our lives. And even though Job's friends had some gross misconceptions about the nature of God that we'll talk about in a moment, I'm still very grateful that they had it in them to travel a great distance in order to share in Job's suffering. In fact, I believe the greatest thing his friends did was found in those 7 days of silence when they first arrived. The Bible has a lot to say about friends. I want to share with you 2 Old Testament passages quickly. The first one is in Proverbs 18, verse 24, where the writer contrasts the person who has many friends but who simply follows those friends wherever they may lead him, as opposed to that one friend that a person may have who is a great blessing to him. And the writer says, a man with many friends is led to ruin. Well, that's simply talking about a person who is just idly following friends wherever they may lead him. But then the writer of Proverbs says, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. I hope you have a friend like that. Then in Ecclesiastes 4, verses 11 and 12, Solomon himself said, moreover, when 2 lie down together, they keep warm. But it is difficult for one to be warm by himself. One can easily be overthrown by another. But when someone stands with him, he can resist. And a threefold cord is not quickly torn apart. Both of those passages speak about the importance of relationships and friendships. It is likely in your life that you're going to have various types of friends. In fact, there are 3 types of friends that I want to talk to you about for a moment. Some of those friends in our lives are what I call casual friends. They're casual because primarily we share a common interest. It may be that you're in class with someone and they become your friend because you are in a class together. Or maybe it is someone you work with and you become friends with them because of your work together. Many of you young adults with children, perhaps you have friends because your children are on the same ball team together, t-ball or whatever it may be, or they may be in the same school classroom together. You see, these are casual friendships, but what happens with casual friendships is that whenever that common interest passes and the kids are no longer on the same ball team, or you're not in the same class, or you take a different job, those friendships tend to drift apart and even go by the wayside. Now, the second category of friendship is what I call close friendship. And these are individuals whom you willingly and freely associate with, not necessarily just because of an interest that you share in common, but because you truly enjoy being together. You may get together and go out to eat. You may come together and play games or go camping together or go fishing together or even take trips together. These are close friends in your life, people with whom you freely associate with because you enjoy and find encouragement from being with them. But do you realize that even close friendships change? Because as our lives change, and sometimes jobs move us from one community to another, situations change, even those close friendships shift and change and are altered through the years. But there's a third type of friendship, and you'll not have many of these in your life. But you are very, very blessed and fortunate by the ones you do have. And these are the ones I call your confidants. These are the individuals who have come to be the most trusted, the most interested friends in your life. You can trust them with your life. Time and even distance will not separate them from you. They will be with you through thick and thin, through good and through bad, in bright days and in dark days. They will confront you when you need to be confronted. They will have the courage to come to you and to help you and strengthen you when you need it most in your life. They will make you uncomfortable in order to get your attention. As I said, you'll not have many confidants in your life, but you will be extremely blessed by the ones you do have. Many years ago, there were two entertainers. Now, those of you who are young adults and college students and high school students, you're not going to have any idea about these, but let me talk to you about them and just share them with you, and you can look them up on YouTube or something. But about, 100 years ago or more, there were two men who were entertainers, and they performed on what was known as the vaudeville circuit. Back in the days before movies and TV and things like that, way back before my time even. Vaudeville was theater, community theater. And these two men began traveling together doing community theater. They were both comedians. One of them's name was Jack Benny. Another one's name was George Burns. They formed a friendship in the early 1920s that carried them through the remaining days of vaudeville. And then as commercial radio began in the 1920s, it led to radio shows. Both of them had their own shows that were very popular during the 1930s and 40s. And then when television came along in the late 40s and early 50s, they both made the transition to television. Jack Benny died at the age of 80, way back in 1975. George Burns actually lived much longer. In fact, he celebrated his 100th birthday and died shortly after that in 1996. But here's what George Burns once wrote about his confidant, Jack Benny. He said, "Jack and I were best friends for over 50 years. He laughed at everything I said. I never walked out on him when he played that scratchy old violin. And he never walked out on me when I tried and bungled a song." He said, "I suppose for most of those days, or most of those years, Jack and I spoke to one another every day, regardless of where we were." Now that's a confidant. I'm thankful Job had friends who were interested in him. But here's the second thing we need to take notice of this morning, and that is that friends are imperfect. Friends are imperfect. When Job's friends began to speak, they did not speak wise counsel. In fact, the more they spoke, the more it was revealed that they had a very poor conception of God and his justice. So what happens with Job and his friends is this. Job's friends begin speaking to him, and as they speak, they try not to comfort him, but rather to indict him. Now remember, this is what Satan has been trying to do all along with Job. He's been trying to impugn Job's integrity. He did it. And remember back in chapter 1, verses 6 through 12, or in chapter 2, verses 1 through 6, when God told Satan, have you considered my servant Job? I have no one like him, who is upright and blameless, who fears God and turns away from evil. And so Satan launched a full attack on Job. He took away all of his finances. He took away his family, his 7 sons and 3 daughters. He even struck at Job's fitness physically through these painful sores. And yet, Job 2 verse 10 said, in all of this, Job did not curse God. He did not speak against God. Now, Satan is going to use these friends to strike at Job in another way by seeking to impeach his integrity. And they began saying things like Eliphaz in chapter 4, verses 6 and 7. Remember Job, and you can almost hear Eliphaz with his self-righteous type of voice. He says, remember Job, when did the innocent ever perish, or the righteous be destroyed? He says, according to what I have seen, he who plows wickedness and sows trouble will harvest it. In other words, Job, you have brought these calamities upon yourself by sinning against God. You've done something, Job, that has brought all of this down upon you. You need to confess it. You need to get it out there. You need to own up to it. Job's friends were living by the theology of their day, which, by the way, is the theology of many people today, and that was that all suffering was a result of something that a person had done in their life. If you were struck with some disaster, it was because you had offended God in some way. I mentioned last week that there are times when we must reap the consequences of reckless, foolish actions on our own. But folks, if every one of us was struck with pain and suffering like Job was because of sin, we'd be a lot of miserable people this morning. We must be careful that we do not box God's justice in by the parameters of human wisdom. Because God is so much higher than us. As Isaiah said, his ways are not our ways, his thoughts are not our thoughts. We have a concept of justice, but God's concept of justice is so much greater and more righteous that we can't even comprehend it. But Job's friends kept on for 24 chapters trying to impugn his integrity and impeach his character. And there are going to be people in your life who are going to try to impugn your motives. They're going to try to impeach your character, and they are going to try to drag your integrity down. Just like Job's friends. I'm thankful for friends. But your friends are not perfect. And neither are you. And neither am I. We need to be very careful in listening to our friends. My wife and I were sitting at a restaurant here in town. It's been a couple of years ago now, before the quarantining and the social distancing. We were sitting at a restaurant out on Race Street, and in the booth next to us were a group of college students. I'm assuming they were students. They were certainly that age. There were 3 young ladies, and there was one young man who was speaking loudly enough that you couldn't help but to overhear his side of the conversation. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, at least not at first. But the more he spoke, he was telling these young ladies about God and about church. And the more he spoke, the more I realized he didn't have a clue what he was talking about. He was spouting off with every kind of stuff you can imagine. I wanted to get up and go over and say, "Excuse me, may I enter this conversation?" There are friends who are going to tell you things about God that are not true. There are friends, and I use that word somewhat loosely, you understand. There are friends who will seek to mislead you about what is really true and what God does desire from you in your life. You must realize that your responsibility as an individual is to go to Scripture, which is the inspired by the Holy Spirit himself. Your friends are not, by the way. And do what the people of Berea did in Acts chapter 17, verse 11. There, Paul had left Thessalonica and was coming down to Athens, and he stopped in this small community of Berea and preached. They didn't just listen to Paul, because Acts 17:11 says they were more noble than those of Thessalonica in that they searched the Scriptures daily to see if these things were so. And you need to do the same thing with your friends. Search the Scriptures to see if the things they are saying is so. And don't just go to church where your friends go. Don't just go to church because they offer coffee and donuts. I'll guarantee you another church will crop up down the block that'll offer cappuccino and cream-filled donuts. That's the way it goes. Search Scripture. Be a person like Job who had integrity enough to know that what his friends were saying was not so. And in chapter 9, verse 21, he says, "I am innocent." And he maintains that throughout this entire book. I am innocent. I have not thought of myself. I have not been guilty of some secret sin. Job understood his righteousness and his blamelessness. Well, he wasn't sinless, no one is. But Job understood the reality of the situation. And by the way, I might add this. Be careful what you read on Facebook about God. Facebook theology. Well, let me just say it like this. One of the posts I saw on Facebook said, "Do not believe everything you read on Facebook." And it was attributed to Abraham Lincoln. And whenever a theological question gets asked on Facebook, you can bar the door, because you're going to get all kinds of crazy answers. Don't rely on Facebook. Rely on God's book, the Scripture. Finally, I want to say to you as I conclude this morning, friends are no replacement for God. We find great comfort in friends, I hope. We can find inspiration from friends, encouragement from friends, fellowship from friends. But folks, friends are no replacement for God himself, because your friends cannot save you. Your friends cannot atone for your sins. Your friends cannot bring justification and sanctification into your life. That is something that only God can do, and the only way God does that is through the gift of His Son, Jesus Christ, who is your greatest friend, who will be your greatest friend, who gave His own life on the cross for you and rose from the dead so that one day He can welcome you into that eternal life that He has promised. Do you need a friend like that today? I hope so. And I hope you'll claim Him. He says, "Come to me, all you who are heavy laden, who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." Do you need some rest today? Come to Christ. Put Him on in baptism. Walk with Him while we stand, while we sing.